Hello and welcome to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. I'm Sean Zerillo, joined today by Action Network Baseball OG Collin Whitchurch to break down the Tuesday slate in Major League Baseball. Collin going to give out some of his walk props that he's been dabbling with this year, so stay tuned for those near the end of the show. We also have Grant and Neiffer from Scores and Odds giving you some home run bets for Dinger Tuesday. And with that, let's get into the slate for Tuesday, April 15th. Happy Tax Day, everybody. Hope you got those addressed. If you haven't, maybe sign off on this podcast and take care of that and then come back to the show. But my best bet for today, the Cincinnati Reds. This was my biggest projected edge in the model. I make the Reds about minus 125, both for the first five and the full game here. Luis Castillo, I believe this is his first start back in Cincinnati since getting traded from the Reds. I believe it may be his first start against the Reds in general since getting traded from Cincinnati. Now, his velocity is down a tick this year. Maybe facing his old team, it comes back up a velocity, a mile an hour tonight with that adrenaline dump. But his strikeout minus walk rate sitting at a career low rate. His walk rate is back up above his career average level. And Nick Lodolo looks healthy this year. This is a guy who, anytime he's on the mound, we like the skill set. It's just a matter of him staying healthy. Dealt with a variety of injuries last year. Collin, I know he's a guy you're high in as well. We've talked about Nick Lodolo a bunch in the Action Network Slack in the past, but Nick Lodolo, 2.5 expected ERA thus far. The bot ERA is also at a career best mark. The Stuff Plus ratings, everything pointing in the right direction for Nick Lodolo. The biggest difference with the Reds team this season is defense. This has been a bad defensive club for the past 5 years, 7 years. No better than league average in any season, typically in the bottom five in baseball. Last year, I believe they ranked 28th. This year, both third in outs above average and defensive runs saved. So I don't know if that's something that Terry Francona is tightening up. Just new direction in general. It's not like they have substantially new position player group. So curious why the Reds are doing much better defensively, but they do project as an above average defensive team. So I do like to see the match between the on-field performance and the projection I have in my model. The last note, Alexis Diaz likely comes back off the IL tonight. So one of the worst bullpens in the league gets their closer back, gets a high leverage reliever back in there. Seattle still has the bullpen edge, but maybe Alexis Diaz helps neutralize that a little bit. So Cincinnati, anything minus 115 or better would be a bet for me today. Still saw plus money this morning, though it is starting to move to minus 105 to minus 110. Collin, welcome back to the show. Any thoughts on the Cincinnati Reds tonight? And then go ahead and give out your best bet, which is a first five money line, one of my favorite markets to dabble in.
Yeah, you mentioned Diaz coming back for the Reds, and that's their bullpen hasn't been good, but Emilio Pagan has been pretty good back there filling in for Diaz in the meanwhile. So moving Pagan back into that eighth inning role probably with Diaz there, or even knowing how Francona operates, maybe mixing and matching a little bit should definitely benefit them. I have a little bit more to say on Castillo. I'll save for later in the show, so I'll get right into my best bet. As you mentioned, it's a first five money line on the Milwaukee Brewers tonight against the Detroit Tigers. I'm getting them at about plus 115. Fangraph's pregame win expectancy model actually favors the Brewers tonight at about 55%. And I'm intrigued a little bit by Quinn Priester. The Brewers traded their number 6 prospect by Baseball Prospectus's rankings to acquire Priester, which raised a couple of eyebrows. Busted former first-round pick from the Pittsburgh Pirates. Spent some time with the Red Sox last year, didn't make their team out of spring training this year. Wound up in Milwaukee, which is a really smart franchise when it comes to identifying and developing starting pitching. He's shown below average stuff through most of his major league career at this point, but he has fewer than 100 innings pitched, or maybe right around 100 innings pitched at the major league level at this point. Started throwing a cutter last year, shown some moderate success there. And the cutter, the thing about the cutter is it gives him an out pitch to left-handed hitting, which is something that he didn't have in the past. And he has now a more solid and diverse array of offerings. The cutter's kind of his out pitch against lefties. His sinker slider works well against the righties. I think he can be kind of a solidly reliable back-end starter from Milwaukee, which has had all sorts of rotational issues. So they're hopefully getting a little bit healthier. He might not even stick in the rotation for that long with Brandon Woodruff coming back, with Tobias Myers coming back. But I'm intrigued by what Milwaukee sees in him, and I think that if they tinker with his release point, his offerings, his pitch mix, we could see him become a reliable weapon for them, whether it's in the rotation, whether it's in the bullpen. And I like him especially just in these first 5 innings against Jack Flaherty, who's been about as helter-skelter as a pitcher can be over the last couple of years. His velocity's down this year, which concerns me a little bit. He's obviously shown great results so far, despite that, through 3 starts. But while his strikeouts have been there, it hasn't been with an inordinate amount of swing and miss. His whiffs are actually down a little bit from last year, down compared to the MLB average. The Tigers' offense has been, surprisingly good for the most part this year. I know we talked on the AL Central preview podcast. I was down on them a little bit. Kerry Carpenter has been, one of our favorite guys. Kerry Bonds, as you call him. Riley Green is slumping right now. They gave him the day off yesterday, and they won easily. It'll be interesting to see what they get out of him. And Spencer Torkelson has been incredible. Mm-hmm. A lot of talk about, what they're going to get out of the former 1-1 draft pick. But it'll be interesting to see what the Tigers' offense can continue to do going forward. I think Priester has a good matchup against them, and I'm down a little bit on Flaherty. So getting the Brewers at plus money here, getting plus 115, around the plus 105 to plus 110 range, I think is good value tonight.
Yeah, it was Brewers or pass for me. I discussed yesterday situationally, just this being a terrible spot for them going against the top of the Tigers' rotation, with the bottom of their rotation coming off of those 2 brutal emotional losses in Arizona. They did reset the bullpen yesterday. They just threw Alexander and then Elvin Rodriguez. So I was talking about the fact that they needed to reset the bullpen. They did get that reset yesterday. So Priester, if he's in trouble in the 5th inning today, like, they can actually lift him for a reliever. He doesn't need to pitch through trouble. That's, an encouraging sign. I like the over in this game. I made this total about 8.25. You mentioned Flaherty's velocity dip. Anytime he's starting on regular rest, it seems like he's wearing down a little bit in the postseason last year. So there was a big drop in his effectiveness first half, the second half of last year, strikeout minus walk rate, expected FIP. But then once he got closer to the playoffs, anytime he was on 5 days rest, you would see the velo dip. Anytime he was on 6 days rest or more, the velocity was coming back up. First start of the season, 93.6. Second and third starts of the season, 92.4, 92 miles an hour. So I think Jack Flaherty on regular rest, you're going to see him continue to fatigue. I think you can kind of project him either where he was in the second half last year or where he was 2 years ago. Anytime that fastball is under 93, closer to 92, anytime his slider is under 85, closer to 84 or 83, you are seeing a reduced version of Jack Flaherty. There are diminishing returns once he gets past those certain velocity levels. So Priester, I still think figuring it out with the cutter. The cutter doesn't grade out particularly well, but I do like to see him experimenting, at least changing it up. As you said, there is first-round pedigree there, but typically when we talk about a guy having first-round pedigree, it's not a good sign because it's the only positive thing we could say about him. So more time for Priester to develop in Milwaukee. As you said, maybe he eventually moves to the bullpen or something like that. But at this point in time, I do like the over on Tigers and Brewers, up to 8 at even money, or 7.5 at minus 118. I know this was bet down from 8 as a sharp play, so just keep that in mind. I'm buying back here on the over 7.5. This is not an overnight that I bet at 7.5 and went up. This was an overnight that came down to 7.5, and I fired on it as a result. Let's move on to our top underdogs for today. Collin, you're staying in the first 5 market, going with the team who's maybe been the hottest in baseball, came back, stole my Cubs money line money last night. I thought I was in decent shape, but I hate that Cubs bullpen so much. Just absolutely tragic. You're taking the Padres on the first half money line tonight and not getting the Cubs bullpen involved. Tell me why you picked the first 5 only here.
Yeah, I've been focusing more on the first 5 this year in general, just getting rid of, everyone knows, you're just getting rid of the bullpen variance there. And, looking at Fangraphs, their pregame win probabilities and staking them up against the first 5 odds, I found quite a bit of success this year. So I'm continuing to do that. I occasionally look at the full game. You'll see I do have a couple of full game bets today as well. I am on the Padres full game as well today. For the record, I was going to add that to one of my my other bets later in the show. But as far as a favorite underdog, it's specifically the first 5 because of comparing it to Fangraphs pregame win probabilities. And for the most part, this is a bet on the Padres offense against left-handed pitching, as well as regression in both directions for today's 2 starting pitchers. Shota Imanaga has shown good success this year, despite not inducing nearly as many whiffs as he did last year, or as the Cubs would expect. Vasquez, on the other hand, has twice as many walks as strikeouts this year. His 12 walks in 15 2/3 innings, which is ridiculous after he walked 29 in 98 innings last year. He's not necessarily a swing and miss guy, but I think he's going to find a little bit more success pitching in the strike zone. small sample size so far this year, obviously, but the Padres have been really good against left-handed pitching. They've been really good overall. Obviously, this offense has been on fire. You mentioned them last night against that Cubs bullpen. I was going against Jameson Taillon in Dynasty, so I was very happy to see that he was not able to come out there with the win. I'm sorry for your bet, obviously, but I like the Padres as underdogs tonight. Imanaga versus Vasquez on paper feels like a huge mismatch advantage for the Cubs, but I don't think it's as stark as people might think, just looking at the back of the baseball card stats. So I'm on the Padres today. First 5 at plus 120. I'm also going to be betting them for the full game, but the first 5 is the bet I really like.
Couple underdogs I like. The first is the Toronto Blue Jays. They were plus 110 last night. I think they've come down to my price target today. I would not bet them past even money. I make them minus 110 here. I'm probably the biggest public Spencer Schwellenbach fan out there. Is not a guy I'm trying to bet against regularly. His underlying stuff is absolutely elite, like sub 3 expected ERA, body ERA. The pitch modeling metrics are elite. He has 4 elite to above average offerings. Spencer Schwellenbach is absolutely filthy. But Kevin Gausman, I think, is seeing a resurgence this year. His fastball velocity is back up. The pitch modeling metrics for him are back up. He's actually getting swing and misses, particularly with 2 strikes. That was the big issue last year, was getting into 2 strike counts and then not being able to finish hitters off. He was getting hit really hard on 2 strike counts. Seems like that was some variance, negative variance in his direction, but also he just has the stuff back this year. He was absolutely cooking in his last start against the Red Sox and confidently throwing fastballs in the middle of the zone and getting swing and misses on them. So like to see Kevin Gausman back pitching confidently. I like the under in this game. Under 8, under 7.5 at even money. I projected this at 7.2. I'm very high on both of these starting pitchers, but hopefully in a close, low-scoring game, the Jays defense ultimately makes the difference. Toronto, even money or better, and then the under at 7.5, down to even money. The other underdog that popped up for me today when I fired up my projections hub, the Royals were about plus 165 last night. They were plus 180 today. I would bet them at plus 170 or better. I project their lineup is better against lefties than I do against righties. All their best hitters, Bobby Witt, Salvador Perez, all right-handed, but they also only have a couple of regular left-handed bats in Pasquantino and Massey. The other left-handed bats in there, they platoon out for righties. So they'll throw 7 switch-hitting or right-handed bats against Max Fried tonight. They project better, as I said, against lefties than they do against righties. The issue here is the home runs, and Max Fried doesn't really give up home runs. Michael Wacha, around a league average home run rate, 1.1 for his career, 0.9 the past 2 seasons. The Yankees have 32 home runs in 16 games. The Royals have 9 in 17 games. Now, they play in vastly different home park environments. The Royals would have hit more home runs if they played all their games in Yankee Stadium than hitting 9, just playing in worse weather at Kauffman Stadium. But that said, the power discrepancy in this series, anytime the Yankees, it seems like, go up against these AL Central teams, the Guardians, the Royals, obviously the White Sox, but the Tigers too, it seems like the Yankees always have a power advantage against these teams, and you need to keep them from homering in order to beat them. And doing that at Yankee Stadium with all their left-handed hitters does seem a little difficult, but the number did seem ripe at plus 180 on Kansas City. Colin, before we move to our final bets, any thoughts on Blue Jays versus Braves, and then any thoughts on Royals versus Yankees? And if you have any bets on this game, feel free to give them out now.
I'm interested in your Blue Jays bet. I was looking at that game really hard. I'm a huge Spencer Schwellenbach fan.
Yeah.
Have a lot of dynasty stock in him as well. Looking at, he doesn't walk anyone. He lives in the strike zone. The Blue Jays are not a team that takes a lot of walks. So I couldn't get there in either direction. I am with you that I think Gausman is rebounding, and I'm very happy to see that as well. I just didn't see any significant edge there in either direction. The Yankees-Royals game was interesting to me because I was actually showing value in the Yankees' first 5 last night. You mentioned the line moved drastically overnight. That edge is completely gone. If I had got in last night, which I didn't, I probably would have been on the Yankees for the first 5, just with that pitching advantage. Even when they were in like the minus 170, minus 180 range or whatever, I think they're like minus 200 now. I would have been on the Yankees, but that is a pass for me. In terms of other bets that I'm on, I mentioned the Padres full game. I'm also on the Brewers full game. I talked about that at length. You mentioned the Brewers have a rested bullpen, which is good. The other two individual or game bets that I'm on the Rangers first five tonight. We actually don't have a announced starting pitcher for Texas as of this recording. There was some
I assumed Molly.
question. Yes, there was some question as to whether it was going to be Patrick Corbin or Tyler Mahle. It sounds like it's going to be Tyler Mahle. That's been reported. It just hasn't been confirmed by the team, at least as of the last time I checked. And tonight he's going against Yusei Kikuchi. The Rangers are another offense like the Padres that I like a lot when they're facing a left-handed pitcher. I know you were really high on Kikuchi entering this season. I mentioned Imanaga earlier. His one blow-up outing as a left-handed pitcher this year was against this Rangers offense, so I like the Rangers offense again tonight against Kikuchi. I'm not necessarily the biggest Tyler Mahle believer. I know he's been good so far this year, but I'm even less of a believer in this Angels offense. I'm less of a believer in the Angels offense against a right-handed pitcher. Kyron Paris has to come down to earth at some point, right? Like, that dude's been amazing for the Angels. So I'm staying away from the bullpens here. Again, Rangers first five money line only. And then I'm on the Rockies. Both halves, honestly, is just a value play. You bet on if you bet on the Rockies against the Dodgers, you place that bet and expect that you're throwing that money in the garbage. I fully expect that I'm throwing that money in the garbage, but it's purely a value play where I don't think Landon Knack should be this big of a favorite against any major league team. So we're seeing the Rockies north of plus 250. I'm splitting a bet between the two halves there. So those are my team plays. I will get into my three walk plays like you teased at the top, Sean. I've had a ton of success betting on pitcher walks this year, 23-10 so far this year, and I do have three that I like this year. I've been giving them out on social media, Twitter. You can also obviously follow me in the Action app. The three I like today, you mentioned Luis Castillo at the top in your Reds bet. I actually like him under 1.5 walks today, which you're getting at plus money. The Reds, for as good as their offense can be, they're a very free swinging team. Castillo's walked exactly 2 batters in each of his 3 starts this year, so we're getting the under 1.5 at plus money because of this. Castillo's actually been living in the strike zone more this year than his career average, and he gets the benefit of having arguably the best framer in the sport catching him in Cal Raleigh. So I like kind of zagging here with Castillo tonight and going under 1.5 walks. Whether or not that leads to success for the Mariners or you're going to cash your Reds bet, completely irrespective of that. But again, looking at these walk props, I'm on Castillo's under. 2 more I'll give out. Justin Verlander tonight against the Phillies. This is a pretty juiced one. He's at about minus 180 to go over 1.5 walks. But the Phillies have the highest walk rate in the league against right-handed pitching and the second highest walk rate overall behind Arizona. Verlander's walked 2 or more in 2 of his 3 starts so far this year. The only one that he didn't walk to was against the aforementioned Reds, who are super free swinging, the most free swinging team in the league, arguably. And Verlander's living outside the strike zone more this year than he has ever before in his career. Might have to do with diminished stuff. He's trying to change his repertoire a little bit because of his age and, again, his diminished stuff. 39.9% of his pitches have been in the strike zone this year, which is down from his career average of 42.5. So really high on the over here with Verlander at minus 180. And the final one I'll give out is Eric Fetty tonight against Christ, who are they playing?
Houston.
The Astros. Eric Fetty tonight for the Cardinals against the Astros. This is not zagging because Fetty has been disastrous this year in the strikeout and walk department. He has more walks than strikeouts this season, 8 walks against just 5 strikeouts in 3 starts. But I don't think this is the night for Fetty to turn things around. He walked 4 against Boston. He walked 4 against Pittsburgh after walking 0 with 2 strikeouts in his season debut against the Twins. The Twins are not a patient team at all. The Red Sox are a patient team. The Pirates, for all their offensive faults, are a patient team. And the Astros tonight are a patient team. Fetty lives outside the strike zone. His success comes solely from getting swings and misses outside the strike zone, not swings and misses in the strike zone. So if he's living outside the strike zone tonight, I think the Astros are going to be patient enough that I like the over 1.5 walks for him. I think it's around minus 140 right now. Those are my 3 walk props tonight. And then I'll let you get to your final bets tonight, as well as if you have any thoughts on my walk props.
Yeah, Kikuchi, with regard to the Rangers first 5 money line, I make that about minus 125. I will probably be joining you on Texas up to minus 115. Kikuchi's velocity is down this season. Stuff plus down this season with the Angels. You saw the Astros acquire him, kind of overpay for him at the deadline last year, modify his pitch mix a little bit, get more out of him. Then I was like, okay, they're going to re-sign him, right? They're they're going to re-sign him, right? Nope, they didn't re-sign him. I was like, all right, they didn't re-sign him. Kyle Tucker, or traded Kyle Tucker, let Alex Bregman leave. They have no interest in giving anybody more than a 3-year contract once they hit their mid-20s. Maybe it was a good decision, considering the velocity dip for Kikuchi thus far, the stuff plus decline with the Angels. I think the Angels have played really well. They should be a competitive team throughout the year with the roster they have, as long as Mike Trout is healthy. I know you mentioned Kyron Paris. We discussed Kyron on the show yesterday. Good to see him shaving about 10% off of his strikeout rate. I think that is a good sign that there is growth in the profile. We also discussed Spencer Torkelson, who came up earlier on this show. Torkelson maintaining the same strikeout rate he's had previously. I just think he's, making more contact, like maybe the bat path a little bit better, a little bit more confident, but I do think he's going to continue to be streaky and have major peaks and valleys. Kyron Paris shaving the strikeout rate. Jung Ho Lee, the other guy we brought up yesterday, just like the opposite of those two guys, right? Low strikeout rate, really high floor, going to put the ball in play a bunch. So like to see, or don't like to see the velocity dipping for Yusei Kikuchi. That's just going to lead to increased balls in play, fewer strikeouts, etc. I'll probably join you on the Rangers' first 5. And Verlander as well. I've watched Verlander a couple times. It does seem like he's trying to get calls from umpires. He's living more in the shadow zone, just being like, hey, this is the last year before the ABS system. You wanna help a guy out a little bit with a little call here and there? Like, they can't challenge us still. So yeah, it's he's laboring a little bit. Like, it's very obvious that he's a guy who is used to having a certain caliber of stuff, and he doesn't have it anymore, and he looks visibly frustrated as a result, and he's trying to nibble a little bit more to get away with it at this point of his career. So I really like the Verlander look. I like the Rangers' first 5 look. My final bets I have here, I already mentioned the Blue Jays and Braves under. Going back to the Red Sox and Rays over, the over 9 at even money in Tampa today, the wind blowing out again towards that short porch in right field. I do think sites like Ballpark Pal, who put numbers on ballpark adjustments, they've been having this as a neutral to pitcher leaning park every single day with the wind blowing out. I think they're wrong. I really trust Ballpark Pal. I think their run scoring adjustments, their run environment adjustments are pretty accurate. I think they've been wrong with Tampa Bay. I think they've been slightly wrong with Oakland as well. It's, new data, like new data samples. We're all trying to model this and figure it out on the fly. I think they do excellent work at that website. I do think their adjustments for Tampa have been a little bit wrong with the wind blowing out. And also, I just like this pitching matchup today more for runs than I did yesterday. I'm lower on Ryan Pepio than I am on Shane Baz. He's much more wild. The Red Sox should continue to hit righties better than they do lefties. Now, Walker Buehler doesn't have quite the same implosion potential, I don't think, as Tanner Houck, because Tanner Houck looks like he's completely cooked at this point. He can't strike anybody out. Walker Buehler, though, his velocity is down this season. He was at 95 miles an hour last season. He's sitting 93.5 with the Red Sox thus far. Post Tommy John, seems like the arm is going in the wrong direction again. There were moments in the playoffs last year where it seemed like he could have a breakout or a re-breakout season in 2025. Based on the early stuff we've seen from Walker Buehler, it seems unlikely. And both of these bullpens rank in the bottom half of the league to date as well. So Red Sox and Rays over 9 at even money. Astros and Cardinals. I know you mentioned Eric Fede. I like the over here. I also bet the Astros. The Astros are unfortunately out of range. I don't love betting overs on Hunter Brown starts just because it does seem like he regularly shuts down the opposing offense. He has good strikeout walk numbers, but he's also really good at suppressing hard contact and keeping the ball in the yard. He has a ground ball rate north of 50%. Hunter Brown is just elite, not because he has elite strikeout and walk numbers or elite ground ball rates, but he combines above average skills in both of those categories, which makes him an elite starting pitcher. I think he's continuing to get better. I give him a big starting pitching advantage over the Cardinals here. Do prefer the Astros for the first 5 innings. You can get up to minus 135, but I like the over 7.5 up to about minus 110. I make this total north of 8 with the wind blowing out. Tigers and Brewers, we discussed that over already, so I'll skip that one. My final bets here are the Mets, both for the first 5 innings and the full game. We bet on Tyler McGill pretty much every single start of this season. He looks like Tyler McGill that we saw when he first came up. This guy has had a lot of arm injuries in his past. I don't think he'll necessarily stay healthy for a full season. But right now, while he is healthy, he has 2 elite fastballs, 126 stuff plus on his four-seamer, 116 on his sinker. He stopped throwing the splitter and I believe a cutter, which he was using last year. He's going with a more simplified pitch mix, but I actually do think once he faces a lineup with more lefties, you may see the splitter get brought out again just because it graded out really well and he had good results with it. So what McGill's throwing right now looks like a super effective pitcher. I actually think he has more weapons that he hasn't even shown yet in 2025 that we have seen him show as recently as last year. So the Mets up to about minus 110 in either first five or the full game. And that'll do it for me on today's episode. I believe that'll do it for Colin's bets for today's episode. But before we get out of here, we're going to toss it over to Grant Neiffer from Scores and Odds for some home run bets on today's Dinger Tuesday.
All right, thanks, guys. It's Dinger Tuesday. Let's get into the bangers. We're starting off with a 3-leg parlay. Use that 50% profit boost, and you get that to plus 19,000. First leg of it, Matt Olson, plus 360. Now, the matchup isn't fantastic. Gaussman is around a average pitcher for lefty power, but playing over in Toronto, so got the dome. Don't really have to worry about wind at all. And Matt Olson is one of the best power hitters in the league. Had a little bit of an offseason last year, but just 2 years removed to over 50 home run season. Barrel rate, best of his career thus far. He's been absolutely hammering the ball, and even though he only has one home run, I don't care. All the underlying numbers are fantastic. I love it today. Next up, we got Adolis Garcia plus 460 over at FanDuel. Garcia has been fantastic looking at his underlying numbers. Lowest strikeout rate of his career, highest barrel rate of his career, and the matchup is absolutely incredible. Kikuchi has been one of the best matchups for righty power over the course of his career, owning around a 1.7 home runs per nine given up to righties throughout his career. It was a little bit better last year, but has already regressed massively this year, sitting at 2.45 home runs given up per nine to righties. Playing over in a dome, so don't really have to worry about weather today. I really like this one. And lastly, we got your dong to hit a home run plus 400 over at FanDuel. Yordong, underlying numbers, been consistent with the rest of his career, has not done great so far, but he's one of the best power hitters in the league, one of the best hitters in the league, so you know it's coming at some point. Eric Fetty, one of the better matchups for lefty power over the course of his career, sitting at 1.4 home runs per nine. It was a little bit better last season, but still an above average matchup. And even though the weather is going to be the low 60s during game time, the wind is blowing out to right center, so they're going to help out that lefty power over there with the wind blowing out. I really like all three of these. Again, you parlay them together, 50% profit boost, get all the way up to 191.26, I think is the odds. So pays 191 to 1. Not too bad. One more picks like these, go check me out on the Action Act. Neiffer07 is where I'm at. I'm out of here. Hi, kids!
Thank you, Grant, for those bets. That'll do it for today's episode of Payoff Pitch. Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to tail some of the bets from today's episode, look for quick links in the episode description. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and leave us that 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to the podcast. Also, check out the Action Network Discord. There's a link in the episode description of this podcast. We'll be back here on Friday for more best bets. Thank you to Collin Whitchurch for joining us today. Thank you for listening to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. Good luck with all your bets today. We'll see you next time.